The light of creation still hung over the earth, like a veil of pure perfection that enveloped the entire world. The earth was untouched, unmarked by pain, war, or destruction. Man walked with God in perfect harmony, in a world where all was beautiful, calm, and immaculate. But somewhere in the shadows, something began to shift. The perfect balance, which seemed eternal, was about to be shattered. The garden, where it all began, was a paradise without equal. The mountains rose in grandeur, the seas danced to the rhythm of the wind, and the sky, a deep blue, reflected the glory of the Creator. The animals lived in harmony, as if they shared the same soul as the earth. And Adam, with his eyes fixed on the wonders of creation, felt at home. Eve, by his side, smiled at the world, a part of him, with the animals approaching in complete trust. Paradise was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the morning light never faded. Adam looked at Eve, a serene smile on his lips.
All of this was given to us.
We were not only created, we were loved.
Her eyes were teary, but not with sadness. They were tears of wonder at the beauty of the world God had created for them. He knew that creation was not just a gift, it was a reflection of God's love for them. And for a moment, everything seemed perfect, without a shadow of doubt or fear. But somewhere, deep in Eden, a seed was planted. A soft, almost inaudible whisper crept into Eve's heart. The serpent appeared, gliding among the trees, its beauty radiant, and its voice, soft as the wind, hissed doubt.
God really say?
A malicious suggestion that spread like wildfire, touching the woman's heart. Doubt was born where once there had been complete trust. The choice was before them, and by choosing to disobey divine command, the fall began. Suddenly, the world changed. Eden, that perfect refuge, became but a distant memory. The man and woman were driven from the garden, and a flaming sword was placed at the entrance, marking the separation between earth and heaven. They were alone, cut off from God's presence, now aware of their vulnerability and the depth of the sin they had brought into the world. Paradise was lost forever, and with it, the innocence of Adam and Eve. When Eve gave birth to Cain, there was pain in her eyes and a deep sadness in her heart. The birth of a child should be a celebration, but now the joy was somber, mixed with the knowledge that the world would be different. Sin had already infiltrated their lineage, and generations to come would bear the weight of that choice. Cain grew to be proud, distant, and deep down, increasingly alienated from God's goodness. Abel, on the other hand, was different. Humble and devout, he dedicated his life to the Lord. With respect and reverence, he offered the Creator the best of his flock.
I will offer the best of my sheep.
He understood that to honor God, it was necessary to give the best of himself. Cain, for his part, watched in silence, bitter. He offered God the last of his harvest, the fruits left over from the earth, without attention, without love. He chose the best fruits for himself and left the worst for God. And in offering his offering, Cain felt he was fulfilling an obligation, not an act of worship. God was pleased with Abel's offering, but rejected Cain's. The difference was clear. Abel offered from the heart, with genuine faith, while Cain simply gave what he didn't want. Sin was now completely ingrained in his heart. When Cain saw that his offering was rejected, anger overcame him. Jealousy, pride, bitterness, all of it converged on a single point. He looked at his brother with hatred. The field became the scene of his wrath. Cain, consumed with rage, approached Abel. Wordless, unrepentant, he raised his hand against his brother. The field, once a place of growth and life, became the tomb of the righteous. Cain killed Abel, and the blood of his righteous brother cried out from the earth, echoing in God's ears. The silence that followed was deep and dense, as if creation itself had paused to mourn the loss. God looked upon the scene, and for a moment the face of his presence was hidden. Cain, now marked by guilt, fled. He left behind his mother's gaze, the pain in his father's eyes, and went on to live as a wanderer, wandering a world now well acquainted with the weight of sin. Life went on, but it was different. Evil had spread, and Abel's blood cried out for justice. Seth, Adam and Eve's other son, was born. His lineage, though marked by pain and the fall, still sought God. But sin had become ingrained in the following generations, and humanity moved toward an uncertain future, ever further from the original purity of creation. Human knowledge began to expand. The first cities arose on the fertile plains, tribes became great nations, and men began to dominate the earth. They tamed animals, shaped metals, and created music and art. But despite all the progress, corruption continued to spread like a shadow over every aspect of life. Men began to name the winds, carve images, build altars and temples. But the true relationship with God had been lost, and offerings were now made heartlessly, like Cain's. Evil grew, and the seeds of sin were already deeply planted in humanity. Tribes and cities continued to expand, but what had begun in Eden now seemed a distant legend, a story men had forgotten. Sin, which began with a simple choice, spread throughout the world, becoming a part of everything humanity touched. But few called upon the name of the Lord. In a world increasingly distant from the goodness and purity of old, hearts grew hard. Among those who still remembered God, one man stood out, Lamech, a descendant of Cain, a man of sharp words and violent hands, proclaimed his strength and his vengeance as a trophy.
I have killed a man for wounding me. If Cain's mark demands vengeance sevenfold, that mine shall be 77-fold.
He had become a symbol of pride and destruction, a promise of endless retaliation. Revenge seemed to be his only religion, and with it, he infected those around him. The era was marked by pioneering spirit, but also by human ego. Man, increasingly alienated from his essence, began to see force as the only language capable of defining the world. Yet, even in this world of violence and pride, other names emerged. Jabal, the father of those who lived in tents and raised livestock, knew nomadic life, but also dependence on the land and the heavens. Jubal, the master of melodies, crafted bone flutes and harps with strings made from the plants that grew around his village. Tubal-Cain, the blacksmith, mastered metal and the art of war, forging spears and swords, a testament to the rise and fall of humanity. Art and destruction were born together, in a paradox where the beauty of creation was inevitably intertwined with the devastating force that humanity now sought. As cities grew, men began to form kingdoms. Leaders became kings, and palaces of rough stone rose in the valleys, dominating the landscape as monuments to human vanity. Festivals and sacrifices took over daily life. Altars were erected not to God, but to idols of power, wealth, and glory. People, once humble and with hearts set on devotion, now indulged in a vicious cycle of ego worship. The search for the divine was replaced by the relentless pursuit of self-exaltation. From above, the Lord observed this transformation. The distance between man and God grew. The Lord saw how faith was giving way to power and how men's hearts became increasingly insensitive to truth. The search for spiritual understanding was being overtaken by arrogance and the will to dominate. The connection with the Creator was disintegrating, but still a spark of hope remained. In the days of Enosh, something began to change. People, tired of their own decay, began to call upon the name of the Lord once more. This moment, though small compared to the great abyss of corruption, brought a breeze of hope.
In the hearts of the righteous, a flame of faith still burned, though dim, like embers in the darkness.
Mankind was lost, but there were still those who sought, still those who remembered the Creator.
Creation, however, was no longer the same. The trees seemed less green, the skies less clear.
The animals became more cautious, more distant, as if aware of the corruption that was taking over the world. The earth, restless, seemed to reflect the pain of the sin that men had sown. Everything had changed, and the echo of human choice still reverberated in every living being, in every stone, in every river. And then, the whispers began to grow. Ancient tales began to be whispered among men, stories of celestial beings who had descended to earth, the Watchers. Their presence inspired a mixture of awe and fear. Men called them gods, while women saw them as saviors. These beings, sent to observe humanity, were beginning to break the limits of their divine mission.
Behold, how beautiful are the daughters of men.
They murmured among themselves, now seduced by beauty and carnal desire. In a sacred place, high atop Mount Hermon, 200 of them made a pact. They swore to descend to earth and never return until they had taken human wives. It was the beginning of an age of corruption that would transform the world forever. When they descended, their arrival was glorious. Men saw them as gods. Their clothes shone like starlight. Their voices echoed like soft thunder. Their eyes pierced the human soul with indescribable power. Women desired them, while men feared them. They were no ordinary beings, and their presence reverberated in the hearts of all. Human women, fascinated by their supernatural beauty, surrendered themselves to them. And the children of these unions were no ordinary ones. They grew up with immense stature, unparalleled strength, and an arrogance that surpassed anything known to men. They were the Nephilim, the giants, the first renowned heroes. With their power, they began to dominate mankind, subjugating the creatures of the earth, and soon became the first tyrants, known and feared throughout the world. Cities began to build statues in their honor. Their names were whispered with reverence, but also with fear. Yet something was deeply wrong. They did not age like humans. Their hunger was insatiable, and they soon turned against everything and everyone. First, they began to consume the tombs, searching for food. When there was nothing left to eat, they turned against humanity itself. The fertile plains, once places of abundance, became camps of slavery. The Nephilim demanded tributes of blood, and fearful humanity submitted.
They, who had come from heaven, were now corrupted and taking the earth as their domain. Knowledge, given by those who were supposed to be observers, was now used as a means of control. Witchcraft, astrology, enchantments, genetic manipulation, hallucinogenic herbs, and weapons of war spread like a cancer among mankind. The sky began to darken. Azazel, one of the leaders of the Watchers, taught men to forge swords, shields, and armor. He also instructed women in seduction and the use of makeup to gain power, teaching them to summon the elements of the earth. Knowledge was transformed into power, and power was used for control. War became an art, and lust a religion. The blood of men flowed over the stones like wine, nourishing the gods and their followers. The world was sinking into an abyss of destruction. Amidst this decay, a new race of creatures was born. The hybrids. Abominations, monsters, spawned from the union between the children of the Watchers and human women. Beast-like beings, with immense strength, a monster-like appearance, eyes that expressed their rage, iron skin, and voices that could drive men mad. These distorted and monstrous creatures belonged to no natural order. Creation was being violated, and the wounds opened by the fall were widening. The world was collapsing, and humanity, with its blind eyes, could not see the depths of the abyss in which it found itself. The choices made in the days of Adam and Eve had reverberated for generations, and now the consequences were more visible than ever. Man, who had been created in the image and likeness of God, was becoming a shadow of his former self. The human heart had turned away from the light. Faith had become legend, and the Creator's name was remembered only in whispers. Pride had replaced obedience, and wisdom was replaced by corrupting curiosity. Man yearned for power, for control, for eternity. And it was in this burning desire that he encountered the Watchers. They descended from on high, covered in splendor. Their faces shone like fire, and their eyes held the reflection of the stars. They came in the form of glory, and the world bowed before them. They brought with them knowledge that man should never possess, the secret of metals, the cutting of blades, the use of precious stones, the power of herbs, the design of the constellations, and the paths of the wind. Men called them masters, and later, gods. They built altars in their honor, erected towers and temples that touched the clouds, and offered sacrifices to them. Women adorned their bodies with gold and rare perfumes, seeking the favor of the celestial beings. And the Watchers, overcome by vanity, accepted worship. What had begun as instruction became worship. What was wisdom turned into idolatry. Each Watcher took upon himself a domain and a legion of followers. Asel, the warrior, taught how to forge weapons and armor, and iron came to dominate the earth. Semyaza, the mighty, revealed the secrets of words and the hidden arts. Barakel showed men the path of the stars, and women the power of enchantments. Kokabel, the luminous one, taught how to read the stars and control the weather. And many others, each with their own heresy, shaped humanity in their image. And so, the Watchers became kings over the nations. Their voices were heard in assemblies. Their names were engraved on stones, their images carved in gold and ivory. The people called them sons of heaven, and the true God was forgotten. Men raised their eyes not to the Creator, but to the mountains where the Watchers dwelt. There, lightning was seen as signs of their wrath, and the wind as the whisper of their presence. And from them were born the giants, the sons of corruption, beings who united the strength of angels with the flesh of men. They were monsters of power and fury, of immense size and deformed souls. They had voices that made the hills tremble, and eyes that burned like fire. They ate the fruit of the earth, the livestock, and even men themselves. When there was nothing left to devour, they turned on each other, and the blood of the giants stained the ground. But even in their destruction, they were worshipped. Nations erected colossuses in their image, statues with iron wings and stone faces. People offered their sons and daughters in sacrifice, and around their temples, crowds danced and sang hymns in languages heaven had forgotten.
Violence became law. Justice was buried. Love and compassion disappeared. Power was the new faith, and strength was the new God. Kings sought counsel from the Watchers, priests served idols, and magicians summoned spirits that brought confusion and destruction. The world had become a furnace of sin, and the breath of life began to corrupt. The Watchers ruled over the people with an iron fist and promises of glory. They controlled the seasons, manipulated the weather, and guided the minds of men like a blind flock. And men served them with devotion, believing that these false gods could grant them immortality. They built entire cities dedicated to them, temples upon the seas, palaces carved into the mountains, altars covered in blood and incense. The prayers that once rose to the Creator now faded into smoke before the thrones of the Watchers. The heavens themselves were covered in shame. The stars seemed to fade in lamentation. The faithful angels watched in silence, and the earth trembled under the weight of the abomination. The heart of man, corrupted and hardened, no longer sought redemption. Evil had become nature, and goodness a rare vestige. Generations were born in darkness and died in idolatry. The righteous were persecuted, the innocent sacrificed, and the powerful became drunk on the blood of the weak. And yet, amidst the dust and despair, there was still a remnant. Few, almost forgotten, kept the memory of the Creator. They were broken-hearted men who walked in the shadow of giants and still whispered ancient prayers. Their eyes turned to heaven, and their voices cried out for justice, and the Creator heard. From the heavens he gazed upon the work of his hands and saw that the earth was covered in corruption. Nothing remained pure, neither thought, nor heart, nor blood. The Watchers had defiled creation, and man had become a slave to his own perdition. Then the silence of heaven was broken. The winds began to stir, and the waters of the deep began to churn. The time of patience was drawing to a close. The Most High arose from his throne, and the faithful angels awaited his word. For when false gods reign on earth, the true God prepares judgment. And when the heavens open, nothing can remain hidden. The roar of justice drew near, and the whole earth trembled, waiting for the voice that had once created the world, the same voice that would now come to purify it. And the heavens watched in silence, but not all were silent. A man walked with God. His name was Enoch. A descendant of Seth, he did not accept the course of the earth. His eyes saw beyond the veil. His dreams were prophetic. In a vision, he saw the throne of God and heard,
"Go and proclaim the judgment that is to come.